All right, let's talk about that little voice in your head, the one that loves to show up at the worst possible moments. We're going to break down a deceptively simple but incredibly powerful technique to handle that inner critic. If you're an entrepreneur, a creative, anyone trying to put something new out into the world, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this explainer, it's going to give you a tool to finally get that voice on your side.
So picture this. You are right on the edge of a breakthrough. You're about to launch that project, pick up the phone to make that big call. You're about to hit publish. And then, bam, it shows up. That familiar, nagging whisper of self-doubt that just absolutely kills your momentum. It's like a cold wave of fear that just makes you question everything.
Okay, so the very first thing we have to do is stop thinking of this voice as some kind of personal failing. It's not. Seriously. A better way to think of it is like this: universal saboteur. He's like an uninvited business partner who's constantly second-guessing all your decisions, trying to keep you safe by, well, keeping you small.
And this business partner, it has a playbook. These are its favorite tactics. You've got analysis paralysis, which traps you in just planning and researching forever. There's imposter syndrome, which whispers that any success you've had is just a fluke. Of course, there's fear, which stops you from taking those necessary risks. And the result of that constant mental battle, it leads straight to burnout. It just drains the exact energy you need to build your dream.
And if you've ever felt like a fraud who's just one step away from being exposed, you are so far from alone. Studies show that a whopping 70% of people feel imposter syndrome at some point. And for entrepreneurs, people who are constantly pushing into new territory, you got to believe that number is even higher. It's a really common struggle. So let's dig into the science here. Why does this even happen? Let's reframe that inner critic. Instead of an enemy, think of it as a misguided bodyguard, maybe. One with a really faulty alarm system. The problem isn't you, it's actually your brain's ancient wiring. This right here is the heart of the issue. Our brains are literally hardwired with what's called a negativity bias. The neuroscientist Rick Hansen puts it perfectly. Our brains are like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. For our ancestors, this was a brilliant survival tool, right? But for an entrepreneur today, it just misfires. It treats a business risk like it's a life-or-death threat. And this creates a pretty brutal, vicious cycle. That critical thought kicks your brain's fear center, the amygdala, into high gear. That releases stress hormones like cortisol. Suddenly, your thinking gets cloudy, your performance drops. And then the critic chimes in and says, "See, I told you so." It reinforces the whole cycle, so it just comes back even stronger next time. It's a perfect self-fulfilling prophecy.
So what's our first instinct? To fight back, right? To argue with that voice. Well, it turns out that's kind of like getting into a tug of war with a giant monster. The harder you pull on that rope, the harder it pulls back. You're just locked in this exhausting battle, and you're not going anywhere. This side-by-side comparison makes it super clear. On one side, fighting the critic is all about trying to eliminate it, and it is absolutely draining. And worse, the thought just gets stickier. But the alternative? It's about acknowledging and refocusing, which actually conserves your mental energy. It is literally the difference between fighting an unwinnable war and just choosing to drop the rope.
Okay, so let's get to the good stuff, the solution. We've talked about the problem, we get the science behind it, and we definitely know what doesn't work. So now let's look at the simple tool that actually does. Well, the alternative isn't about chanting positive affirmations or just pretending the negativity isn't there. It's a fundamental shift, a shift in your relationship with your own mind. It's all about disarming that voice. And here they are. 4 simple words. Thanks for sharing mind. I know, it sounds almost ridiculously simple, but this little phrase is a powerful mental jujitsu move. You're not agreeing with the thought, you're not validating it as a fact, you are simply labeling it for what it is. Just a mental event. Just a string of words produced by your brain. The name for this technique is cognitive diffusion. Okay, imagine your negative thoughts are like an obnoxious radio station, right? Let's call it Anxiety FM. Now, you don't have to believe everything the host is yelling about. And you certainly don't try to smash the radio. You just notice it's playing, say thanks for sharing, and then you get back to focusing on driving your car or your business where you actually want it to go. So, knowing the words is one thing, but actually using them effectively when you're in the thick of it, that's a skill. Think of it like a mental muscle you have to build with practice. So let's walk through the exact steps you can start using right away. Here's the playbook, the 4-step process. First, you just notice the critic. Just catch it in the act. Second, you label it to create some distance. So instead of "I'm gonna fail," you say, I'm having the thought that I'll fail. See the difference? Third, you calmly say the 4 magic words. Thanks for sharing mind. And finally, and this is the most important part, you refocus. You immediately pivot to a small, meaningful action that's aligned with your real goals.
Okay, so once you're comfortable with the basics, you can actually have a little fun with this. Give your critic a silly name, like Nervous Neville or Gremlin Gary. Now, when it starts up, imagine its dire warnings in a squeaky cartoon voice. I promise it's almost impossible to take a thought seriously when it sounds like Mickey Mouse. And to make this even more powerful, try pairing the mental phrase with a physical action. So as you say, thanks for sharing mind, you could maybe gently push the air in front of you or just discreetly tap your thumb and index finger together. This helps create a much stronger neural pathway, and it grounds you in the present moment, making the whole process more automatic over time.
And look, this stuff really works. Take the story of Sarah, a startup founder who was just paralyzed by imposter syndrome. She didn't magically stop having self-doubting thoughts, but by consistently noticing them and saying, thanks for sharing mind, she stopped obeying them. She unhooked herself from the fear and just started taking action. She learned that the goal isn't to be fearless, it's to act even when the fear is right there with you.
And really, that's the ultimate takeaway. Your mind is a thought-generating machine. You're never going to stop it. But you don't have to believe every single thought it produces. This practice gives you the power to choose, to acknowledge the noise, thank it for its input, and then get back to doing the work that actually matters.